Welcome to Sparks of History. Joining us today is Anthony Julius, Deputy Chairman of the commercial law firm Mishcon Reya in London, author of Trials of the Diaspora, a history of anti-Semitism in England, and a leading activist in the fight against Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism. Thank you, Mr. Julius, for being with us today. Just a couple of questions and your take on the situation. Are you surprised by the alarming rise of anti-Semitism in England in the aftermath of the October 7th massacre? How bad is it? And are the government and local authorities doing enough in England?
Well, these are all the right questions. So let me try and answer them separately because they require distinct responses. First of all, I mean, in a sense that perhaps the least interesting of the answers would be in relation to my personal surprise. I suppose the question has point because someone who's written a 1,000-page book on English anti-Semitism should not be surprised by English anti-Semitism when it occurs. I published the book before the period which we now know as the Corbyn era, which was when the Labour Party was captured by essentially an anti-Semitic group. I mean, it was many other things, but for our purposes, it was that. And that made sense to me because it was a particularly aggravated form of a form of anti-Semitism, which I had already diagnosed. There were also the protests and marches against the Second Iraq War. And they had a certain anti-Semitic character because of the assumption made that America was in some sense in cahoots with Israel. The bogus thinkers in these groups debated who was controlling whom, but there was that kind of flavoring of conspiracy thinking and so on. So all of that, in a sense, could be derived from what I had written. What's new here, which I hadn't really anticipated, is a certain kind of combination of direct, widespread hatred of Israel and Jews in general, first of all. Second, that it should be so unashamedly expressed, notwithstanding the horrific circumstances of October the 7th. And thirdly, that the institutional response to it is so weak. Response to it is so weak, and also response to Jewish concerns. So can I just quickly take each of those in turn?
Absolutely.
And then I can come on to the other questions. But this is why I was surprised. First of all, I thought, one would have thought, that the events of the 7th of October would give any partisan of the Palestinian cause some pause for thought. I don't mean by that such a person would rediscover himself as a Zionist, but that it would lead to some moment of self-interrogation where consideration would be given to perhaps the complexity of the conflict, perhaps some investigation into the historical conditioning of the conflict. Some reference, for example, might be made, some discovery might be made of, say, the Hebron massacre in 1929, some pattern of behavior, which is one of the inhibiting factors in the possibility of peace. Only one, but still real. And that didn't happen. So what I have discovered, which I didn't know before, is that the partisanship is so deep that it reaches below levels of ordinary empathy and understanding, or a wish to understand, and makes itself inaccessible to reason or any kind of engagement. So the moment of reaching out, seeking to persuade, showing, arguing, pleading, all of that, with which Jews historically had tried to engage with our adversaries, enemies, that feels over. So that for me is fundamental. The second point, the weakness of institutions. This is a matter also of surprise and concern to me. The universities have become, as we know, sites of oppression and intimidation of Jewish students. And the university institutional response has been, as a rule, weak to collusive with the oppressors and the intimidators. The BBC, it cannot be relied upon to give fair accounts of what is happening. The police, operating, I think, on the basis that some disorder is a way of controlling or limiting greater disorder, have enabled expressions of hatred on the streets of London, which have been without precedent. The Crown Prosecution Service, the state body of prosecutors, has been too slow in taking steps against offenders, and so on. So the sense that Jews had in this country that a strong state institutions, quasi-state institutions, were standing between the worst excesses of street anti-Semitic expression and themselves, that is in crisis too. So, and that surprised me.
So the response has been, why has the response been timid? You know, historically in democratic countries, anti-Semitism, it's there, but it was always the government, you know, is committed to fighting anti-Semitism. It's committed to protecting its citizens. Does that feel that it's been lost now, or is it something that could be addressed and stemmed?
So I think one has to disaggregate. I think there are different reasons that obtain with the different institutions. So if you look at the police, as I suggested a few moments ago, I think the police tolerance of this kind of expression is the product of a theory of effective policing. Which I think New York saw until the 1970s or whenever it was. If we allow
the Crown Heights riots, let them take out a little bit of steam, and you know that'll control the situation.
Precisely. Precisely. Allow a certain amount of disorder, of disorderly behavior and expression, hatred, and it will kind of burn itself out. They will let off steam, and yes, exactly. So that's a. I mean, it's clear to me, although it's not been acknowledged expressly, that that is the police view. And that is not being adequately challenged by Jewish organizations because of the intimate relation between senior police and Jewish leaders. I would not to speak in conspiracy terms at all. What I mean is that it's a good thing that relations between the Jewish community and the police are such that the Jewish community has confidence in the police. The problem is when the police practice this kind of policy of disorder control, it becomes more difficult for the Jewish community to say to the police, hang on a second, here we're going to part company with you. So that's the police. The BBC problem is a different problem. The university problem is again a further different problem. Part of it is because of an anxiety about free speech and a complete failure on the part of universities generally to address the question of what is free speech in a university context. And that's a failure which already was entrenched before the 7th of October. And so on. And the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, part of the problem is the relatively low caliber of the prosecutors, lack of funding, and so on. If one gets up close and analyzes properly these institutional failures, quite a complex explanation emerges, which of course is the necessary precondition to acting, but it also schools us to understand that in the first instance, we have only ourselves to rely on now.
Where do we go from here? You know, we recently spoke with Professor Jonathan Sarna of Brandeis University, and the two words that he used, which were interesting, was he said, number one, he believes that there's a palpable fear, and beyond the fear, he says there's a sense of betrayal, that parts of society, organizations that were working hand in hand with the Jewish community on a variety of issues have abandoned the Jewish community, a sense of betrayal. Is that also what you're referring to when you're talking about some of these institutions that haven't perhaps stepped up as they should?
I think, I mean, for me, I don't have an opinion about them. I mean, I have an opinion about the United States, but I don't have an opinion it's worth pulling against Jonathan Sarna's. I don't, but I don't think that language is appropriate in the UK. I think betrayal is an overstatement. I think fear is an overstatement. Okay. I think I would substitute for fear anxiety. Mm-hmm. And I would substitute for betrayal weakening of faith in the institutions.
As an activist and one who obviously knows the legal environment and how to take care of things through the system and the courts, what is the course of action, do you believe, that should be taken by the Jewish community and Jewish leaders in the United Kingdom?
Well, again, I mean, that's a very complex question. and there isn't one course of action which is appropriate. I think I mean we live in politically institutionally decentralized times. Maybe we always did. So appeals to one place, the court, the executive, it does not solve the problem in general, because there isn't a problem in general. There is a problem which is an aggregate of problems in particular places. So there are initiatives that are being taken and need to be taken in universities, not just in universities as a whole, but in individual universities. And each university has its own dynamic and requires its own particular kind of approach. Still further, each department where there's a problem in each university, I mean, we have numerous police forces in the United Kingdom. Each police force requires a distinct approach. Each political party, each grouping in each political party, and so on. And the same with broadcasters. Throughout, of course, we also need an intelligent, coordinating response in which people engaged in these individual endeavors understand the bigger picture and are able to work together in ways that are not self-defeating. Not much of this is happening.
Okay. Are you optimistic, pessimistic? Do you believe it can happen? That it sounds like it obviously needs to happen. It sounds like a enormous task, because there's so many points that have to be hit on so many different levels. Optimistic or pessimistic?
I think that I think that this current moment, this anti-Semitic moment, I think it will pass. But I think that this moment was worse in the UK than the last moment, which was 4 years ago, the Corbyn period.
Mm-hmm.
And this moment will pass, but under conditions which do not rule out a further moment or series of moments in the future. And if we are on a downward trend, and at the moment it looks like we are, because now is worse than then though I'm optimistic that this moment will come to an end, I'm pessimistic about the trajectory.
So what's the next step? How do you get the organized Jewish community to tackle all of these different points?
Well, I mean, we're all trying.
Right.
We're trying, but sometimes we fail, or we do not make our best effort, or our best effort turns out not to be enough. I think we're in that place now, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, again, just hope that everyone is talking about unity. Certainly here in Israel, we've seen a about face in terms of people coming together in the unity, and we hope that will last, and get the sense that that is happening not just in America but in the UK also among English Jewry, that there is this sense of unity, that we must do something, we must address these issues. We have to do it, even if we have to do it on our own.
I mean, the problem, the Anglo-Jewish community, is that it's not. I mean, it's both a problem and a strength. Is that it's so unideological that to think in terms analogous to Israel or the United States about divisions in the community on political questions, for example, makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
I took a very strong position on the so-called judicial reforms, a strong antagonistic position.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in a minority, not because the majority of my fellow Anglo-Jews were rootedly in favor of judicial reforms. No one actually cares. No one cares. It doesn't register. So unity is an easy thing in the United Kingdom. If the opposite, which is an engaged, divided community, is what we fear, that we don't have to worry about. The real problem is inertia, indifference, passivity, and a kind of bemused, perplexed, puzzled engagement with what's happening, which leads to demoralization. And addressing Jewish morale feels to me an absolute priority. We have to find within ourselves the necessary resources and not sink into a kind of a sort of intellectual stupor, so that our responses are limited to let's not wear our kippahs on the street, let's not send our children to school, let's not go to shul, let's build higher walls, stronger barricades. That is the activity of demoralization that we have to combat within our own community.
Again, thank you so much. We can only hope that the trajectory changes and that out of all these events, we'll see renewed Jewish pride and a greater understanding of non-Jews towards the Jewish community and towards Israel. Thank you so much again. Appreciate it very much.
Okay.